All right. It says we are live, guys. Welcome to the show. Today, we have an exciting new topic. Today, I'm going to show you what are the main things to look out for when purchasing a rural property here on the outskirts of the Sacramento area. So, as many of you guys that are watching the channel or tuning in here and there, as you may have been seeing watching the market, there's definitely a trend right now on the desirability of properties up in the foothills and the mountains, something a little bit more secluded and off the beaten path, something a little bit outside the city limits that's still close enough but far enough from all the noise, right? Even I'm a huge proponent of properties, especially that we have here on the outskirts of Sacramento, more rural style properties, because you can get literally anything you want here in Sacramento. We have such an amazing variety. I mean, just to kick it off, if you want some land but a cute, small cottage style home, you got that. If you want to go more luxury and still have some property, you have that as well. So, some of these areas that I'm going to be kind of talking about and beyond really start kind of, if you're looking at central Sacramento, a lot of the things start kind of like Folsom, El Dorado Hills, Shingle Springs, and beyond up Highway 50 towards like Placerville, Cameron Park, and on further up towards Lake Tahoe. So you have El Dorado National Forest starting over there. And then on the other way, if we go up Highway 80, which is right in my backyard here, you have places like Lincoln, Newcastle, Penryn, Auburn, and on up further towards Lake Tahoe as well from the north side. And that's going to be Tahoe National Forest. So a lot of beautiful areas here on the outskirts of Sacramento. I mean, literally within an hour and a half drive, you can be in snow. It's kind of amazing. But if you want to be closer to town, there's a lot of places. I mean, just 25 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes outside of central Sacramento that still create desirable properties kind of in more rural areas in the foothills with a little bit of views, maybe a little bit more secluded, giving you kind of that woodsy feel. And it's really popular around here with these kind of properties. You're in a lot of greenery, but also in a lot of oak trees, which I love. So let's jump to it. You have the price ranges all over the board. So we can talk about that if you're ever considering moving out of Sacramento into those areas, or just in general going there right away. If you're thinking about moving out this way, I'll give you a better list. But the main focus today is I want to bring up some of the costs of buying a rural property. And the reason is I have a lot of clients of mine reaching out to me, hey, we want to sell, or hey, we want to move into the area, but we want to be further on the outside of town. What a lot of people don't realize, if this is kind of their first step into it or just the idea, is that it actually costs quite a bit to maintain that kind of property, that kind of lifestyle. There's a lot more that comes with it as far as cost, but also just workload, really, because there's a lot more property to take care of typically. So we're going to be talking about properties with kind of bigger lots and off the beaten path. So one of the first costs and one of the things you should look out for before purchasing a home, and maybe even before finalizing getting into contract, let's say you see the right home, you view it with your realtor, ding, ding, give me a call. And you're thinking about, hey, what's the preliminary on this property? One of the first things you should ask for and look for is going to be a well pump test. And so a well pump test, typically on the properties here on the outskirts of town, most of the properties are operating on their own well. They might be still connected to some sort of other water source or private water source, or even a shared well. I've seen some of those. But typically, a lot of the homes on the outskirts of town, they'll be on their own well. So one thing with that is, based on the county that the property lies in, there's typically a county requirement on how many gallons per minute that well needs to produce of water. Since it's typically the primary source of water for the home, when you're getting financing on that property, they're going to ask for that report to see, hey, is this meeting the requirement that we need? And so a lot of the times, and I've even experienced this on a few of my contracts, is that with the drought been in the last few years here in California, is that sometimes these properties actually don't produce the county requirement or substandard technically. Now, the owner or the new owner might say, you know what, there's enough water for me. I don't use that much water. It's totally fine. But the thing is, the county for your financing may require it. Now, it depends on the loan. So check with your lender on that when before purchasing the property, depending who you're getting financing with. But I have experienced that in the past, and you're definitely going to want to see that test regardless. You want to know what's going on with the property, how much water that well is producing. Now, with the inspection, you also want to test and get inspected, I should say, the pump itself, the well pump, and just to make sure that it's up to date, everything, no breaks, no leaks, nothing like that. Everything is going well. And so you'll have an inspector take care of that for you. Now, this is not going to be your typical home or pest inspection or included in that. This is a separate inspection. So this is another cost before getting into a home, but it's also another cost of maintaining the home. If something ever goes wrong with it or the well's not producing enough, there's other ways around it, but you definitely need to keep an eye out for that. Now, what can you do if the well is not producing enough water? Well, one of the things is I've actually had one of my clients get water delivered every few months. I believe he had a huge storage tank off to the side, and they would come and fill up that storage tank. So he had extra water on the side in case something happened, basically a reservoir. So that was pretty cool. And I know there's services for that, but then again, it's an ongoing cost. And if it was me, I'd prefer the well to be pumping enough and not worry about it, because it's amazing when you have enough water. You can water all your plants, your house, everything is fine, ready to rock. So first and foremost cost, the well pump test and the well. Okay. Big cost. One thing to also consider, and a lot of people think that they can kind of go on this, like, you know what? We'll buy the house. We'll eventually, dig our own well and stuff. Well, that's great, but a lot of the quotes you get are estimates, and estimates don't guarantee that they're going to hit water on the first try or at the depth that they're saying they think they're going to hit it at. Now, obviously, there's professionals out there, this and that, but I have heard of some stories out there, and you just don't want to get into a place where you're consistently throwing cash at something and don't really know where it stops. So that's just something to consider. I personally, if I was going to be buying a property, I want that well to be there. I don't want to be the one trying to dig it or go through that headache of trying to do that. Okay. So that's number one. I got someone on here saying, thank you for rocking and rolling. We're trying to rock and roll. Guys, also, if you're just tuning in or maybe you're just watching this video randomly, haven't heard about the channel, this is a live. We typically go live every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m., giving you facts, news, things, everything there is to know about real estate here in Sacramento. We talk about the different areas, talk about a lot of the new developments. So if that interests you or that's something that you're looking into, feel free to hit that like button, but most importantly, hit that subscribe with the bell so then you kind of know when we're going live and when we're putting out content. Really helps us out. Appreciate you on that. So number two, next big cost with this is going to be the septic. Now, being out further in rural areas, you're not going to necessarily be connected to a typical, sewer line, things like that. So, or to the city sewer line. So, instead of just getting a sewer line test, you're going to have to get the septic test, and you want it pumped. So you want it inspected and you want it pumped, cleared out before you get in there. You want to make sure that it's good to go and ready to rock. Typically, when you're purchasing a home, let's say the seller did their homework, they would typically get it inspected beforehand and get it pumped at the same time. As far as me taking on a listing, when we have done that, we're always pushing for that to be done beforehand because we want the buyer to know what they're getting into. And it's typically one of the bigger costs in a transaction, especially if that septic is damaged. Oh, that can be thousands and thousands of dollars to replace. And also to get it basically inspected and pumped. Some of the recent quotes I got was as low as $500-$600 on up to $1,000, more or less. Depends where the property is, how far out it is, how much there is to do. So that's just an estimate, but again, another cost. Now, replacing the whole system is very expensive. So that's why you want to do this on the front end. Make sure you know what you're getting into. Okay. That's number two. I hope you guys are enjoying this. I hope it's helping you out. I know some of you guys that may be watching this and you guys already went through this process. You're like, let's get to it. But I promise you, I got some golden nuggets for this one. So stay on. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit of cold, and it's Christmas season, so it's most wonderful time of the year, isn't it? Check this out. Number 3 is going to be the propane tank. This is one that I look out for in propane tank. You want to know whether the propane tank is leased or whether it is owned by the current owner of the property. So that makes a big difference. If you're leased, you typically have an ongoing monthly bill, or however they structure it with the current owner, and then they'll refill it. What's nice about the lease is they maintenance the tank. If something goes wrong with the tank, you call them out. They're either replacing it or doing the repairs. But then again, with the lease, you are paying a little bit more. If the tank is owned, you're not paying that. All you're paying is for that tank to be refilled. One of my clients, she's a single lady that has a propane tank, not that too big of a house. She doesn't use it too often. She said she only fills hers up once a year. Again, it's based heavily on usage and how often you use it. But that's one thing you want to know, whether it's leased or owned. Owned, going to be a little bit cheaper for you, but then you don't really have that maintenance part of it. So kind of back and forth there. For some people, it just depends on your desirability, really. So keep an eye out for that. Also, take into consideration what it costs to refill that tank, because that can vary. Also depend on the area that you're in. So get some quotes from local companies based on the area they're going to be purchasing in, to know what to expect. And also a good question is to ask the current owner, hey, how often do you refill this thing and what are you currently paying? So those are some good questions to know, and also some things to consider. Now, one thing, this is going to be kind of more for the properties that are on the very outskirts, probably towards the summit, more into the mountains, into the national forest and stuff like that. And that's going to be properties off the grid. So off-grid properties, those properties will require another power source via solar panels, maybe having some sort of generators, batteries, backups that are giving power, or more natural sources. It could be a variety of things that are giving power to the property. Now, one thing to consider with these off-grid properties, and I've only really seen a few of them, they're awesome if you like that cabin style and you're like that guy or gal that just want to go out there and do your own thing and no one's touching and stuff. The downside is that they're really tough to finance, if not impossible to finance, because lenders want to see that the property has, sustainable power, really. And so that's going to be one thing, is that typically on the ones that I've seen that are fully off grid, self-sustaining, really tough to finance. So they typically end up being cash deals. Now you can actually scoop up a good deal because of that, because most people can't really pay cash. So that's something to consider. Now, again, it could go both ways depending which lender you're using, what the power source is, and things like that, different things that the property has. So you have to just check in with your lender, and you might even have to make a few calls to other lenders in the area and brokers in the area that can do financing for a property like that, and that have experience with properties like that. Okay. So this is not, one lender can do all things. This is going to be a little bit different. They got to know their stuff. So talk to me. I can set you up with a few brokers in the area, a few awesome lenders that can help you out if we're in that situation, or if you're considering something like that. And so at least hey, what are my options? Can I finance this or not? Okay, that's another big cost potentially. On that same note, buying a backup generator. Either way, we have a lot of power outages, especially here from Rocklin on up. And a lot of people have been buying generators for their homes, usually small ones, just to kind of sustain the fridge and little things here and there's a little bit of power. But if you're getting them more often, or if you're really out in the mountains and you're really reliant on um, the electricity or gas or whatever it is, you really want to have a backup generator. Now, this could be $1,000, $2,000, depending if you want to just get like a entry level starter to get you by, or you can go high end, where I've even had one of my family members buy a $10,000 one that within 30 seconds, if the power goes out, pops right back on. But again, $10,000. So, but in their area, they have a lot of power outages, even though it's a very upscale community. They have a lot of power outages. For them, it makes sense. For them, it was a good investment. So just keep an eye out for that. That could be a very big expense. And if there is one on the property, make sure it's included in the sale. Make sure to include that in. Typically, it's fixed to the property if it's actually one like the higher one that I'm talking about. But just make sure that you verbalize that to your agent that you're working with and that you know that you're getting it, because that's going to be a huge bonus for you. All right. Another big cost, let's say you want to buy rural areas. We're talking about the foothills here outside of Sacramento, is going to be higher insurance premiums. Right now, as you guys may have heard, in California, over the last few years especially, we've had a lot of fires, some droughts. Thank God we're getting a lot of rain. Last week we did, and this week, and probably for the rest of December, I'm thinking. But we're still technically in a drought, as they're saying. So with that is that the premiums tend to go up, and a lot of the premiums. So, and it's because of that fire risk associated. And so when you're buying these properties on the outskirts, again, it depends really where it's located, how close to previous fires. It goes above and beyond. I have a good few insurance agents as well. If you want to do quotes on a specific property, they'll be able to run it for you. But I would expect a few extra $1,000. I mean, there were some homes that home insurance premiums were $3,000 to $5,000. Some were almost $10,000 per year. So quite expensive. But if that's the price you want to pay for being out there and enjoying the greenery, the trees, being secluded, some people will absolutely pay for that. And I totally understand that, because I'm on the same boat. But just make sure that before you're writing an offer or getting into contract, that you want to just get some quotes out there to know realistically what you're getting into and what are the fire risks and the hazards for a wildfire in that area. And you will be, when you're buying a property, you should know this, that depending who you're working with, you'll get a natural hazards report, okay? So on a natural hazards report, it'll say if the property is in fact in a fire hazardous area or is prone to be in a hazardous area. So check that out. Make sure you check out that report. But then again, a simple, quote from your local insurance guy. Make sure they work in that area and they know what they're doing, because everybody quotes different numbers. So there's a lesson in itself. Now, with that, I want to move on. So let's say you're buying a bigger property. Let's say it's not even the biggest property, but you have not clear boundary lines. Let's say there's not existing fencing or any sort of markers. You may want to do a survey. So a survey is hiring a professional to come out and actually pinpoint by a map how the property runs, where are the boundary lines, where it changes, switches, where are the exact easements, things like that with the property. So you want to make sure that you know exactly where your boundary lines are. Now, a lot of people won't do this because it gets expensive, and quite frankly, it's not the easiest to find a good surveyor in our area. They're out there, we can find them, but one thing you should consider is that it can cost a little bit of money. We've gotten quotes before, a couple grand for, not even half an acre. So just keep an eye out for that. But if you are planning on subdividing or doing something particular with the property and really want to know your boundary lines, or are really interested in what the neighbor is doing next door, or if they're on your property or not, it might be worth it. So look into that. Make sure you talk to a professional about that. And of course, if you're working with a professional, they should know how to take care of you. If you ever have any questions on that, you guys can reach out to us. Our info is down below. So that's just something. Speaking of, boundary lines, easements, access that neighbors can have onto your property or through your property. Sometimes those can be just a driveway to their property, or a common creek area or things like that. One thing you also want to do is verify that there's no mineral rights and the easement. So you definitely want to check on that. You'll be able to tell by the reports that come with the property once you're in escrow, and maybe even the current owner should know if there's anything like that on the property, because that can definitely change the value of the property. And you want to know who has access and who doesn't, and what the agreements look like for that. Okay. Another thing is, let's say it's just a vacant piece of land and you want to build a brand new home. So here's another cost, is that there's the cost of actually building the brand new home. But now in these foothill areas in certain counties, cities, is they will require a certain clearing outside the home. So let's say you have your home in the middle. There's got to be a certain circumference around the home of all the trees cleared to make sure that that home is not in a high fire risk situation. So make sure you plan for that and are aware of that. And of course, if you're working with a contractor on potentially building a brand new home on a vacant piece of land, is that you'll want to know from them, hey, what are the exact requirements, how far out we need to go. I forgot the number at the top of my head, but we're talking with one of our clients that built a brand new home in Newcastle, and they had to create a certain clearing. Even though they had 5 acres, they still had to create a certain clearing around the pad of the home. So keep an eye out for that. Check up on what the current regulations are, and we can find that out for you as well, depending on what area you want to be building in. That could be a cost because cutting trees is not cheap. It's not easy. Okay. Now, last and final thing as far as costs with potentially building a brand new home, let's say in a rural area, is you want to do a soil test. And even if the home is already built, let's say there's some kind of considerable areas that you're maybe not sure about, or there was some running soil, or it looks like water was kind of running through and eroding certain soils. I would highly recommend, if you know, really any price, it might be worth it. Or if you're going to be building other buildings or properties, is I would get some soil tests done, and you can hire professionals to run some soil tests to make sure that the soil is not substandard, or can actually be built on, and that your foundation is not going to fall through or something like that. Or, obviously ask the current owner too if there's been any, sort of landslides or erosion, major erosion, or water leaking through random areas, especially in the foothills here. You might have a property tucked up right against like a foothill or a mountainside. So that's just something I would look out for, because that's can be a considerable expense. And then also, once you find out that there is an issue and you already bought the home, now you have to disclose that to your next buyer when you're selling the home. So just keep that in mind. Basically, what you want to do is you want to do the right due diligence before purchasing a home like this. Now, it could be amazing. It could be off the beaten path. You could have the best time of your life in that home, but you just want to make sure that you're making a sound investment and you're getting into something that you could see yourself living there for a while, a long time maybe. Because a lot of the times I've noticed that when people move out, they typically don't come back too close to the city. So they're enjoying it. It's a different pace of life, a little bit more peaceful, in my opinion. And so there's a lot of beautiful towns around here outside of Sacramento, in the greater Sacramento area. If you guys are ever considering to seeing what's available, you can reach out to me and my team down below. I always have my phone number in the description. You can shoot us a call or text, or you can even schedule an appointment with me for 15 minutes, and we could just have a conversation. You could tell me some of the things you're looking for, or this lifestyle that you're looking for, price point, whatever it may be that you're looking for in a property, and we can discuss, and I can kind of give you some opinions and my ideas of what might be a good fit for you here on the outside of Sacramento. Well, guys, I hope you've enjoyed these tips, and I hope that you avoid some of these costs when buying a rural property. Now, again, I am 100% for it. I would love to help you. I personally love the properties we have. I really do. And I think there's some great opportunities out here. So I hope these don't scare you off. We're just going to be doing our due diligence before buying your property to make sure that you're making a sound investment and that you're going to enjoy that home for years to come. And just a reminder, if you like this video, hit that thumbs up. Really helps me out. Drop a comment down below. Let us know some topics that we can cover in the future weeks to come, and we'll be sure to address those. We go live every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. So, guys, thank you so much for watching. My name's Sam Golovey, and I hope you guys have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.